Hello, welcome back to my channel, Snips by Kelly. I'm Kelly and I am excited to be creating with you today with the For Always collection. This is part one of a 4-part video series in which we're going to be creating 7 pages, 4 layouts, and each video is going to focus on one layout. So if you want to create right along with me, you'll need to have that guide downloaded, which is in the description of this video, and the basic straight cutting portion done, and then we will begin. I'm super excited to start out with layout 1 here that features our youngest son Zachary and his little family. The For Always collection has black and white pattern papers, and it draws in the color from the 12 by 12 sticker sheet and the coordinating cardstock. The coordinating colors are toffee, desert rose, mist, rosemary, and then it pulls in some black and then a little bit of French vanilla to tie it all together. In addition to adding those cardstock colors and those sticker colors, we're going to bring in some color and some interest with these 2 stamp sets. The backgrounds stamp set, which has 3 different backgrounds, this wonderful floral, the stripe, and the zigzag. And then we're also using the Love Doily stamp set that has this great doily that has a wonderful star pattern in the center. And we're going to create some flower clusters with that. And it also has 2 word stamps. So here is layout 1, and this is where we're going to begin. Before we get started, be sure you hit subscribe and the notifications bell so you're all ready for video 2 of 4 that's coming up next. So we're going to start this next section with a little bit of prep work. So I have all of the inks that are listed for this workshop. I have my stamp chamois. I have the backgrounds stamps on individual blocks. If you only have one that size, you can easily exchange them and move them from block to block. And I have my 2 sentiments and the doily. So we are focusing on layout 1. However, there are a lot of single doilies that need to be stamped for the whole workshop. So I'm going to flip my Versamat over to the soft side, cover that up with my all-purpose mat, and grab a French vanilla 12 by 12 cardstock. We're going to create with rosemary, mist, desert rose, and intense black, and we're actually going to create all of the doilies needed for the entire workshop that are the single doilies that need to be fussy cut out. So I'm going to stamp one of each color needed. We're going to make sure that we have good coverage on the doily stamp. I'm starting with rosemary. You're going to need 7 rosemary doilies like this. Now you're going to be able to pause the video and create the number needed. And you're also going to be able to get about 12 of these on a sheet. You can squeeze them pretty tightly together because we're going to fussy cut that center star. The next color is desert rose. You're going to need 6 of these desert rose doilies. So you can pause the video and stamp 6 of those. And then we're actually going to stamp down directly and stamp again without re-inking because we need some second generation doilies. We need 5 of those. So that is what second generation is, when you stamp again without re-inking, and it creates that lighter tone. And it just adds a little bit of an extra color in your workshop to be able to have 2 tones of the same color. So the next one that I'm stamping is mist, and you're going to need 4 mist doilies. So you're going to pause the video and stamp 4 of those. Again, all of yours will be tightly squeezed together, and there's a photo that represents this, and you can fussy cut those centers out even if those little edges overlap. The last color is black, and we're going to create 8 black doilies. So again, you're going to create 7 rosemary, 4 mist, 8 intense black, 6 desert rose, and 5 second generation Desert Rose. And then you're going to literally begin the process of fussy cutting those center stars out. And I promise you, they are not so intricate that they're frustrating. If you rotate your paper like you see me doing here, your rotating the paper is going to do most of the work instead of cranking your wrist around over and over. And it works really, really easily. So you either love fussy cutting or you hate fussy cutting, right? It's the thing. But I promise you, if you sit down and you work on these centers, it will be done in no time flat. So go ahead and pause the video and get all of that fussy cutting done. Now that pre-prep work is done for those single doilies, we're simply going to focus on layout 1. We're going to start with some background inking, and we're going to use the mist stamp pad on the 11 by 11 French vanilla pieces. There should be 2 of them from your straight cutting, and we're going to use the blending brush and just rub gently on the lower right and the upper left, and we're going to just rub a little bit of a glow in the background. It's a wonderful technique to just add a splash of color, especially when the pattern papers are mostly monochromatic and all black and white. This rubbing technique with some ink in the background really helps some of your embellishments to stand out, and it also adds splashes of color to an otherwise monochromatic layout. All right, so once we get the rubbing done on the upper left, we're actually also in a next step going to stamp directly on the page up in that upper left corner as well. When you have the ink on your left page the way that you like it, we're going to move on to the right. So as you can see on the right French vanilla 11 by 11 piece, we are rubbing the same ink only in the upper right and the lower left, the opposite corners. So if you feel like it, you can flip your paper over and label them right and left, but I think real soon when we do some direct stamping on the page, you'll be able to show tell these bases apart. So I did get a little heavy on mine in the lower left, but I'm okay with it. I know that it's going to have some strips over the top and some embellishments over the top, and I like the splash of color, so I can live with that. So now, since we have the right page French vanilla piece out already, we're going to do some direct stamping using the Love Doily. Okay, here we go. I am going to talk to you about just eyeballing it. It's for interest in the corner. There's no set reason it has to be in an exact location. Most of the second generation mist doily is covered up, but for those of you that can't stand it, I'm giving you a few measurements. So the right edge of the second generation stamp doily is 1 inch in from the right side of the French vanilla, and the bottom of that second generation doily is about 1.5 inches up from the bottom. So however you look at it, if you just go in from the right side with that doily stamp, second generation doily, 1 inch from the right and 1.5 inches from the top, the bottom of that doily ends there. We're actually stamping that second generation doily first, and then we're overlapping it with about 3/4 of the regular mist ink doily, because if you do it the other way, there will be lines. It doesn't stamp as nicely. It's nice for the darker one to cover the lighter one. So here we're going with that second generation doily, so you can see it's that right edge of that doily is about 1 inch in from the right, and that bottom edge of that doily is about 1.5 inches up. If yours is a little different, it's going to look beautiful. Now we're coming in with about 3/4 of the full strength mist doily. It's so pretty. It stamps so beautifully, and it adds so much interest to the page with direct stamping, as well as the pieces that we're going to embellish with that we fussy cut out. Now we're going to pull back in the 11 by 11 for the left page that we already did the inking on, and up in the upper left corner there is a partial second generation mist doily that just peeks out from underneath the strips, and then it's going to be covered with a flower cluster or star doily cluster that is going to sit in the center of that. Again, for you that need measurements, this second generation doily is going to start about 1/2 of an inch. The left edge of it is going to be about 1/2 of an inch from the left edge of the French vanilla, and it's going to be just a hair under 2 inches down from the top. So you can mark it. I'm showing you that I'm marking it, but honestly, depending on your photo and depending on where it lands, you can adjust that flower. So you can, wherever your doily lands is where your flower will go. And the whole concept of it is just to be able to have that doily peeking out over the top of the rubbed area and peeking out from underneath that flower cluster. Most of it isn't going to show, so I'm showing you here how 1/2 of it will be covered with those strips. So now we're going to move on to the stamping of some of the bits that you cut in the straight cutting portion. We have a mist tag, we have a French vanilla tag that we've created, and we have 2 French vanilla strips. We're going to use that Love Doily stamp again, and we're going to start with the intense black ink. We're going to stamp on the mist tag just a little tiny bit of that doily in the upper left corner and a little bit of that doily in the lower right corner to generate some interesting bits to put on your page. If you don't have larger bits that come, say, in a sticker sheet or in some extra added die cut embellishments, stamping is a great way to add all kinds of little bits to your pages as fillers and embellishments. Now I'm using my all-purpose mat and my stamp chamois to wipe off the ink, and if it bothers you to stop and wipe your all-purpose mat, that's what I love to do. It's the easiest for me. But if it bothers you, you can definitely put scrap paper under the bits that we're stamping so that you don't have to wipe the ink. And I can be a hazard, as you can see, so I often will just spritz my fingers with a little bit of our stamping spritz cleaner and wipe with a stamp chamois so I don't get murky fingerprints on my beautiful pieces. So now we're going to use the long floral background stamp, and we're going to again use the mist ink, and we're going to stamp that floral pattern in the center of that tag again for added interest. In a later step, we will put some black lines around the top of the tag for more interest, and we'll embellish it with a gem, but for right now it's just so pretty to just add that little floral piece. Again, kind of still a monochromatic feel to this layout because of all the black and white, and then only using the accent color of the mist, but it just adds that gorgeous tone in there. So I'm inking my my background stamp, and I'm just stamping across the strip. And what I love about this stamp is it has a little bit of a rough edge. It's not straight down, so because it's kind of jagged and rough, you can get it imperfect in there and it will still look so flush and so beautiful. Now we're going to repeat that performance with the second strip. I love adding this color and this extra pattern in here by just stamping on the French vanilla. It's so fun to be able to add a color strip in with those black and white pieces. It's a wonderful accent color. All right, we did it. Awesome. So let's take a look at the photos. So the photo sizes are listed as 2 4x4 on the left and 4 3x4 on the right. Now, of course, you can adjust those sizes. I'm going to use these photos from our youngest son, Zachary, and his little family's photo shoot that they did when Waylon James turned 1. There's some blues in there from the blue jeans that go well with the mist, and I feel like the browns tied in well together. So if you don't have a photo printer that does the white frames around around your photos, you can always trim them down just a little bit and mount those on the photo mats or the photo place card holders that come right in the kit. That works great. It's a wonderful use of those if you're not needing those to hold the place of your photos. So now I'm just going to mount my frame onto a white daisy. So you do not have this in the workshop because it's a step that I prefer. So you can very easily mount your gutted frame that you created in the straight cutting portion. You can mount the inner 11 by 11 French vanilla piece right on that frame, and that can be your base. I prefer to have a little bit of a more sturdy base, so I always mount my gutted frames onto white daisy, or if I've messed up on a piece of paper, and even if it's a color, I will use that for the background to give myself a little bit of strength in that layout. Many people don't like the extra bulk. They don't feel it's necessary to waste that piece of paper. It's just 100% a personal preference. So I like to mount my gutted frames onto a piece of cardstock. And then many of you know, if you've been a paper crafter for a while, sometimes there is less than an 1/8 of an inch of difference in our white daisy cardstock and the pattern paper. And so we usually get that little hair of an edge, just enough to drive anyone with OCD crazy. So I like to put the entire thing on my paper trimmer, but I do something every time to make sure that I don't get shredded edges. So I like to pop my blade into the center of where I'm going to cut so that I can push upward and then back down again, making sure my blade is completely inserted in the center. And then it cuts perfect strips off of those edges, just a tiny hair. If you sometimes take a run at it from the bottom or the top, you'll get a little bit of a push or a shred, and then it drives you crazy even more, and then you end up cutting even more off your paper. Shake your head yes if you understand what I'm talking about. So I'm going to do the right page and the left page a little differently in terms of adhering. So on this right page, I'm adhering the 11 by 11 prepped piece for the right page right onto that frame, and then I'm going to add the strips. For the left page, I'm going to show you how you can put the strips on first and then trim them and then add them to the frame. So it's 6 to 1, half dozen to the other, however you like to do it. Now, even though we're looking at the right page here, I'm actually just sorting the strips to the left and to the right. The left page and the right page get the exact same strips, and then we're going to move over once we have the strips organized to the left page. So now we're on the left page base, and I'm showing you how to do it in the opposite way. So we're going to add the strips first, then trim around the 11 by 11 French vanilla, and then add it to a frame. It's again a personal preference. So I'm just getting my strips in order, and these strips on the left page are going to start 2 inches in from the left side of the French vanilla. And once you get that very first strip perfectly straight, all of the rest of them fall right in line and are flush next to each other. So sometimes what I do to get my strips straight, if it's smaller than a 12 by 12, like this in this particular case being an 11 by 11, I use my Versamat and I line it up at the top and the bottom of the Versamat so that I know that that very first strip is perfectly straight, and then all of the rest of them will fall in line. If it is larger than a 12 by 12, then I actually use my T ruler. My T ruler is longer than a 12 by 12, and so it allows me to lay it over the Versamat and still get those strips straight. I always tease on my videos that you can bury me with a couple things There's a couple things that I won't live without. One of them is this Versa mat. I will never live without my Versa mat, my all-purpose mat. And I don't know, T-Ruler is getting up there because it seems like it's just wonderful to have that extra long bit. Okay, so here is something that happened to me. I made an error in my cutting. I mean, that never happens to you, does it? So I'm actually glad that it happened because sometimes it's nice to see when there's an error that there are fixes. So I believe I accidentally cut this strip to 10 inches instead of 11 inches. So I pulled that master back in to sort of see where the photos would fall. And I was able to snip that strip in half and use half of it on the bottom and half of it on the top because the part that I messed up on or the part that's missing is not going to show. So I kind of love it when I see other people do things like this because it sort of makes you feel way more human, right? Because I make mistakes all the time. And I think sometimes people think in their paper crafting that they have to be perfect. Sometimes people from the outside looking in make it look so easy and so perfect. And it isn't about being perfect. It's about getting those memories scrapped for your family and being the keeper of the memories. And speaking of not being perfect, there's a small little imperfection on the left page of some ink blotch or some little splatter that I got on there that I didn't mean to get on there. And I'm just going to pretend like I meant to do it. I do that all the time. So I'm adding a little extra mist ink over the top so it just looks like it's a distressed area or an area that I've shaded with ink, and I'm happy with that. So now I'm going to show you how I mounted this onto the frame after putting strips on. So you first saw how I mounted to the frame and then put strips on. Now I'm showing you how you can put the strips on first and trim them out and then mount them to the frame. It's 6 to 1, half dozen to the other. It's however you would like to do it. And the moment that I always dread, photo placement. I hate giving measurements for photo placement because I just typically put them where I feel like putting them. And if your strips are a little different, if your photos are a little different and you need to adjust your bits because of where your subjects are in your photos, it may not matter. But for those of you that have to have a measurement, this photo that I'm placing right now is 5 inches down from the top of the French vanilla and about 1/4 of an inch in from the right side of the French vanilla. And I'm actually just making the corners touch of each of the two photos. And then if you have to have a measurement, it looks to me like it is about 3/4 of an inch from the top of the French vanilla. And you can see that it overlaps that black strip that upper left photo does. So as far as the tags, I'm going to add black journal pen to the top of the tag for added interest as an option. You don't have to. And then of course I'll be putting a clear gem on the tags to decorate them. I'm not going to place my mist tag just yet because I've opted to use that mist tag for my journaling. So I want to pull it back out and add the journaling to that. Now, if you want to add journal strips or if you want to do your journaling on a label or if you want to put your journaling in a different spot, you can go ahead and do that and just go ahead and place that mist tag. So this next part, this little sticker is a rectangular sticker, the gray and black rectangular sticker from the sticker sheet. And I've simply cut that in half so that I can use half of it on this left page and half of it on the right page. And that is a technique that I do all the time. I love actually getting 2 or 3 uses out of one sticker, and so that really works well. There is the title, the Always in My Heart title, and I did cut these stickers out, but typically what I would do is I would use my anti-static pouch and take the sticky off the back so that I can slide things around with no problem. But because I knew that this sticker was going to go on this page, I actually just cut the sticker out, but I'll be adding the anti-static pouch and adding foam tape to that simply because I don't want it to bow in and stick to the page in different spots. I want it to be flush all the way across. I happen to have some little foam pieces left over from a slimline shaker, and so I'm using up those pieces, but my go-to is typically rolls of the foam tape. I love those the best. So I added that flower cluster. I call it a flower cluster, a star cluster, a doily star, whatever you want to call it. The clusters that we created out of our beautiful stamped doilies. And it is one of the fussy cut pieces with a piece of foam tape in between and then another one on the top, and they're kind of toggled. And then I've added 3 clear gems to the center of that, and I added that one to that stamped doily, that partial doily, tucked the little black sticker in, added the Always in My Heart title, and then the little arrow on the lower left that is tucked in between the French vanilla and the black frame. And now I'm going to add a couple more of those star doily clusters to the bottom. Again, depending on where the subjects are in your photos, you may want to adjust these, but we have a black cluster and we have a mist cluster, and we're going to add those. And then I believe all we have left is to embellish this page with clear gems. Now, if you feel like you need a little bit more ink, you can always mask it off and add a little bit more ink now that your bits are in place. I'm going to add this sticker up at the top here, and then I'm just going to slide those clear gems off with my thumb and add those little gems in different places. And I love how it turned out. Now, I am using this with forward generations. So I'm doing kids and grandkids because my legacy, my family tree is a bit of a stump. I have adoption in my family and only children in my family, and I don't have a large extended family. But my paper crafters that I introduced this to yesterday morning, I guess it was, because it debuted yesterday morning, felt like it would be great memorial pages for a loved one who has passed. And that's always kind of tricky, isn't it? Because you want to have beautiful pages for them, but sometimes time needs to go by. My mother passed away quite a few years ago, and I still have yet to do her memorial pages. So now we're moving over to the right page, and as you can see, the strips are already in place. They are 3 inches from the left of the French vanilla, so you're going to pause the video and add your strips. I'm just kind of playing with the photo placement, but the strips are in the same manner as we did on the left page. They're a little bit different order, as you can see. You have the film strip, the mist strip, the black doily, our stamped French vanilla piece, the smaller mist strip, and then the floral strip, and again 3 inches in from the left. So go ahead and pause the video and get those strips in place, and then we're going to play around with photo placement, you know, my favorite thing. So I will give you some measurements here. So the photo on the way right, the farthest right, is barely even, not even 1/8 of an inch from the right edge of the French vanilla. And it is approximately 3.5 inches down from the top of the French vanilla. And I've chosen to overlap that one with the photo up on its upper left. And I would say there is about not even 1/2 an inch on that top photo from the top of the French vanilla. But based on your subjects, I feel like I'm repeating myself, you may need to toggle your photos in a different way. So on my PhotoMate 400, I'm able to push my subjects a little more over to the right or to the left if I need to before I print. But if you don't have that option and your subjects are where they are, you're going to have to probably toggle your photos a little bit differently. On the left side, the left photo is about 1/4 of an inch from the left of the French vanilla, and it is approximately, I'm looking here, 2.5 inches, not quite 2.5 inches from the the top of the French vanilla, and then you're just connecting that bottom one. So you have actually the two photos on the upper right that are sort of toggled together, and the two photos on the lower left that are toggled together. And then you're going to put the I love you because saying right up in between those two left photos. And I specifically spell this out in the instructions if you need those specific measurements, but you can kind of see where they're placed and what strips they're next to, and you can eyeball those. And I just kind of wanted them to look like somewhat of a clock face where there's a circular motion, but there's plenty of space to be able to add more photos if you so choose. I wanted it to be a little more decorative, and I wanted to limit it to my favorites of this series. You know, you could go on, I could do 100 of these photos. They had so many cute ones, but I really just want to have one really well done layout with this theme. So on the lower left, that is the other half of the rectangle sticker. I already used half of it on the left page, and now I'm cutting just the words out of another one of the stickers, and I will reserve the bottom words in case I want to use those somewhere else. And now it's all a matter of embellishing with the gems and adding the gems to the page. I'm super pleased how that turned out, and I hope you loved it as well. I'm so excited to be able to complete this layout one with you, and I hope you've enjoyed the very first of 4 videos in this series. Make sure that you subscribe and hit the notification bell so you see when I post video number 2 out of 4, and we're actually going to move on to layout number 2 in the series, which features our oldest son Colt and his family, and it is going to be titled Legacy of Love. So I hope you're excited for the next round. So be sure to stay tuned for video number 2 out of 4. I'd love to see your creations if you recreated this layout. I'd love to hear your comments of what you loved and what worked for you and what was helpful. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today, and have a wonderful day. Happy scrapping.